Alright boys, so I've been wanting to play an Ice Nova build for quite some time now, but I haven't really been able to figure out how I want to go about it. And I've been mulling over the ideas for probably a couple of leagues now. There was a version of the build that I played a long time ago, which was like a Scold's Bridal, cast 1 damage taken, like auto Frostbolt version, which was pretty cool. There's the classic one that you just do self-cast Frostbolt and Ice Nova. And we were talking about it over on my stream at twitch.tv/BigDucks, which you should go follow by the way. And we got on the idea of Spellslinger. Now, not just any normal Spellslinger, but Inquisitor Spellslinger with a very, I'd say probably underutilized node, and that was the Fanaticism node. So we're still in the initial stages, but it's looking somewhat promising. We're gonna have to see how well it scales with some extra gear. But remember, if you're enjoying this content or it's helping me out, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that little notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So this is the character Ice Sling. Yep, very original name, I know. Now, this is an interesting character because there's lots of little moving parts that are all very important when it comes to this build. There's a lot of things that are super important that may not be obvious at first glance. The idea behind this build is that this build utilizes the Instruments of Zeal keystone, Fanaticism. What this does is that it makes it so that as long as you're attacking roughly every 1 second, you're going to keep up this buff called Fanaticism. It grants spells that you cast 75% more cast speed, 75% reduced cost, and 75% increased area of effect, which are all super powerful for this build. Now note that it does say spells you cast yourself, so it is important to understand that it is spells that you cast yourself. It doesn't affect attacks, it doesn't affect anything else. So the idea here is that as long as we maintain the Fanaticism buff, we can essentially endlessly cast our Ice Nova. Now normally our Ice Nova costs around 45 mana, as you can see here, but when we do have the Fanaticism buff up, you'll notice that it costs 0. Now the reason for this is that we have a few things. Fanaticism is 75% reduction, but on top of that we have Inspiration support, which is giving us another 33%, and then we are also getting some from the life and reduced mana cost of these nodes here. So what this ends up being is it's like over 100% minus mana cost, meaning that the spell is free as long as we keep Fanaticism up. Now you might be wondering, well, if your spell is free, how are you keeping Inspiration up? Well, we have Inspiration linked to our Frenzy, and our Frenzy is made to cost exactly 1 to 2 mana. If I recrafted the -6 to -7, our Frenzy would cost exactly 1 mana, which would be a little bit better. The idea is that as we are attacking with Frenzy, which is proccing all of our Frostbolts, we are keeping up this Inspiration charge, and due to Inspiration needing like 660 mana spent to lose those charges, we can kind of just sit here and attack forever, and we'll pretty much never ever lose our Inspiration charges, which is pretty good. Now, this build is mainly scaling its damage through cast speed, crit, elemental damage, all those kinds of things. We are in the very initial stages, so I don't want you to take this like POB that's down in the description or this tree or anything as gospel. This is just some stuff that I've thrown together on a whim and am seeing how everything lands and feels and works. We tested it out over in standard and things were mostly working okay, but I'm not 100% sold on how I'm doing it just yet. This is going to need some more testing. I'm going to need to do a little bit more with it. Once we do have all of the specifics of it, and if everything goes well, I will make a full build guide. So if you are not up for some testing of yourself, make sure that you wait until the full build guide. Now, we do use a couple interesting new things, and one of those is going to be a Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh of Bastion of Hope. This is a node by the Guardian, which gives you, for every 2 seconds out of 5 seconds, is 50% chance to block attack damage, which is fine, but it's if you've blocked in the past 10 seconds, you and nearby allies cannot be stunned. If you've attacked recently, 10% chance to block attack damage, and if you've cast a spell recently, 10% chance to block spell damage. So, we are able to scale quite a bit, actually, of both block and spell block. Now, I'll be able to get a little bit more normal block when it's not the full amount up, but we can get like 45, 55 roughly around here right now, which is decent, but I do need to invest a little bit more into block. We can do some cluster jewels as well as I can grab some of these other nodes and such. But we've got that. We're going to be scaling armor with determination. We need to get our gear a little bit more situated. As you can see, I'm kind of using like Skullhead and some random crazy items and such. The thing I want to note about this build is that it is already functioning quite well. Like, I'm level 79 and I'm in like tier 13, 14 maps and doing mostly fine. It's using some absolute garbage gear. There's not this chest piece I think cost me 6 chaos or something like that. It was something super cheap. And the rest of the gear is nothing insane, right? This is just random stuff I found on the ground or stuff that's not too expensive whatsoever, no crazy flasks or anything. Most expensive piece is honestly this Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame, which you don't need, but I thought it'd be interesting to use. So let's jump into a map so I can kind of show you how the gameplay feels. Now keep in mind, this is not 100% the way that the gameplay is gonna feel. Let's see, max life is extra energy shield. No, I don't think so. Reflect Fizz, we do a little bit of physical damage because we are using Battle Mage, which grants us a little bit of physical damage, so we shouldn't be doing that. If I don't want to do, that's fine. Blind on hit, I don't care. It doesn't actually matter if we hit with our attacks. Now, the one caveat about this build and the way that it plays is that if you can't get the rhythm of the attacks and everything down, it is a little weird to play. But when you do start figuring that out, it actually feels quite good. Now, I don't have a level 21 Vol Ice Nova yet because they kind of just don't exist. I'd have to make them myself, which I am leveling up the gems. You have to use the Alva Temple and such like that to be able to get it working, so they kind of just don't exist anymore since 21 Vol gems have to be made in Alva's Temple now, I think. I don't think that those can just drop naturally anymore from like random chests and things like that. But this is the basic gameplay. Now, I will say right off the bat is that this build is carried by MTX, as you can kind of see. Without the MTX, it's not as much eye cancer as you would expect. But overall, it does pretty well. At this lower level of gear where I haven't spent a ton on min-maxing things, this isn't like a low investment build or something that you should league start. At least I don't think that you should yet. I'd have to spend some more time figuring it out. But it does have a few problems with single target damage right now at this, you know, very minimal gear level. But as far as I can see in POB, we should be able to get 4 to 5 times the amount of damage we've got now without too crazy of investment. So we'll have to see how that goes. But this is the basic playstyle. You've got, you know, shield charge to move around relatively quickly. On more difficult enemies, you can just kind of spam the Ice Novas quite a bit, which is quite nice. And we've got, you know, decent move speed. Our defenses, I need some more life, which is really just going to come with levels. I do want to get more armor scaling. I need to use Defiance Banner and such. But I'll show you a little bit about what I'm talking about when it comes to single target. The single target isn't terrible, but it's also not great, right? Like, we do okay damage. Larger bosses are easier because it's, you know, not as hard to miss, but right there, you kind of see one of the problems with the build is that I dropped Fanaticism there, and it made it so that I couldn't actually use my spells for a second. That is kind of a problem. If you have the Mana Flask going, it's not too big of a deal. But if you're like, if you don't actually have Fanaticism up, and you've got all of your mana reserved like I do, you could always drop an aura or something like that. You could drop like Tempest Shield or something so that you have more of a mana pool to work with. But if you've got this little mana, if you drop it for even a moment, you can cast exactly 1 Ice Nova with the current mana that I've got. But that's the concept of the build. It's running pretty well for where it's at. We're only really like a day into progressing and working on this character. There's a lot of things that I want to do. Like I said, I am leveling a bunch of Ice Novas because I want to get a 21 Vol Ice Nova, because we're going to use some interesting tech here. We're going to use the chest piece that drops from Itziri to give +1 to all Vol gems. And then on top of that, I'm going to try to do a Hunter Warlord chest piece, I think. We're going to do +1 active skill gems with additional curse, and then we'll do like prefixes can't be changed, and do a caster reroll to get spell crit chance. And then we need to grab a bunch of crit multi on jewels and such like that. I do need to get a better weapon. I have to get like Crown of the Inward Eye. There's a bunch of things that I still need to do to the build where I just haven't really leveled up and gotten everything together yet. We've just been focusing on leveling. But that is the plan. The build, as I said, for where it's at is working quite well. I do need to do some more testing, as I said before, so make sure that you don't just jump straight into this build just yet, unless you're willing to do a little bit of testing. And that is going to be it for the video. Now, if you want to see this build in action or see all the different things that we do with it over the next couple of days, make sure to join me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/BigDucks. Make sure to follow over there. But beyond that, build looks pretty interesting. We'll see how far that we can push it, see if we can get the damage where we want it, see if we can get the tankiness where we want it. I'm not 100% sold on how well the build will do, but I've really wanted to play an Ice Nova build for a long time, and this one is a little bit different. There is also kind of a low life variant that uses, I think, the Ivory Tower that we could possibly get working, but that's like way more investment memes into low life and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll see about that maybe after we're done with the rest of things. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that little notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content, and stay safe out there in Rayclast. And I'll see you guys in the next video.